and welcome to this week's YouTube video. So today I thought I'd show you how I painted this black cat. It is a longer video as it has not been speeded up, but it has been edited, so I will tell you the colours that I am using as we go along. If you want to know my full palette colours, then this is detailed in the description box below this video. Okay then, so let's paint. This painting is painted onto Daler & Rowney oil painting paper. I should mention I have covered it in a wash of raw sienna and turps before I start, as I wanted to warm up my painting area before I began. I do want to stress though that this is a colour that I prefer, and I am actually dyslexic, and if I were to work with a coloured overlay on text, it would be this colour. So if you favour a different colour to start with, you must go with what feels right for you. Working on white is a big no-no for me, but if you are comfortable with white, then it is not a necessary step in your painting process. It's just a step that works for me. However, from a practical point of view, I also find raw sienna warms up my canvas area and makes it easier to leave my whites and light areas until the end, virtually untouched. For the detailed areas, I will always use a small round brush. I'm starting here with the eyes. I have lightly sketched the cat in with pencil, and I am now blocking in the features with a mini sort of underpainting using raw umber and turps. So it's not a full underpainting, but a very light wash of an underpainting to establish my drawing is correct and start sorting out my values. So now I'm going in with a larger brush. This is a flat brush. I'm still only using raw umber and turps at this stage. So now I'm just changing back to a small brush to get that nose in. I'm using less turps because I want a more definitive edge for my eyes and my nose features. This will make it easier for me later on to see that detailed area. So I'm back now to the larger flat brush with more turps, and I'm just expressively covering that cat. It's important to keep it loose and expressive at this stage. It's probably worth mentioning as well that underpainting with raw umber will mute any colour that you lay over it. So for example, with the balls of wool, I want to keep my colours more vibrant. So I'm going straight in with my greens. I've mixed yellow ochre light plus ultramarine deep to get this shade of green. I'm still using quite a bit of turps though. I'm not using my thicker paint yet. I'm just adding a wash over the background as I want to get my cat integrated into its background as soon as possible. I'm mixing yellow ochre light, ultramarine deep and cad yellow plus white for this colour. I'm still using turps at this stage. Okay then, so that's my first layer done. I'm going to leave that and let it dry, and then I'll have another go at it, which will be my second layer. So layer 2 then. I'm starting with the eyes again, establishing the green colour using a small brush, no turps this time. I'm mixing yellow ochre plus ultramarine plus cad yellow plus white. Don't forget that white naturally cools colours down, so yellow will be controlling the warmth in your colours. Moving on to my black areas, for the deep darkest blacks, I will always add cad red to ivory black. So I want my black to be as warm as possible. The raw umber provides me with a really nice base which I can allow to show through my layers. I'm actually working with two photo references. So one is in colour and one is in black and white. For this really dark black area, I'm actually only referring to my black and white photo, blocking in my darkest areas with black plus cad red. Where the value begins to change to the lighter areas, I am using black plus white. This will give me a cool grey. So we are not only shifting value, but we are also shifting temperature as well, going from warm to cool. I am also trying to get some cool green into these areas as well. This will help integrate my cat into its background. So I am mixing yellow ochre light plus ultramarine deep, but it's heavier on the blue because I want it to be a cooler green. I am probably referring far more to my black and white reference photo to guide me as to my values. Don't be afraid to go in there with your finger and smudge it about a bit. For that warmer area in the ears, I am using a mix of cad red, raw umber plus a bit of black, so it gives me a very warm brown. If I need to change the temperature and make it cooler, I'm just going to add some white. So we're now going into the body colour, and again this is black plus cad red. Again, I'm using my black and white reference photo to tell me where my darkest areas are. I've added a tiny bit of linseed oil to my paint just to make it flow a bit easier at this stage. So I'm just going to swap my brush then for a bigger brush. Don't be afraid to keep swapping in your brushes depending upon what you are painting. And I've not got loads of paint on it, as I want to create as much texture as I can by using a dry brush. I really like the brush marks a dry brush can give you, and I want my raw umber layers to show through in parts, which they do better on dry brushwork. For the lighter areas then, under the cat's stomach, I am using raw umber plus cad red plus a small bit of black. I want it to be more brown than black, so I'm using heavier on the reds and the browns than on the black. I'm doing the same down the side of the cat too, so I can control the temperature with black plus white to cool it down and red plus raw umber to warm it up. I'm just making sure now that my temperatures are correct and I'm adjusting accordingly. I'm adding green to my edges as I want a smooth transition into that background. So now we're going to start painting the wool now, and it's the temperature shifts and the value adjustments that's going to create that illusion of form. So then for my darker areas, I am using ultramarine deep plus yellow ochre light plus cad yellow, and I'm heavier on my yellows. And for my areas where the light is hitting them, I'm using ultramarine deep plus yellow ochre light plus white, but I'm heavier on my blues as I want this to be cooler. And you can see as I'm starting to put my wool in, it makes it easier to see areas in the cat's face that maybe need adjusting, using perhaps this green that I've mixed up for the wool. You can see then that I'm just building up my darker, warmer areas on my wool very gradually. I'm adding a little bit of raw umber plus cad red to my greens in those darker areas near the cat. This will give us a much more realistic transition. So you really don't want to be trying to paint every line of string. You need to paint the impression of the ball of wool. If you find yourself getting too focused on the detail, then a good trick is to squint. If you can't see it when you're squinting, then leave it out. This will also help you see your values plus your colour transitions more clearly. So let's have a go at that background then. You don't need to cover it all in heavy thick paint. We want some contrast between the cat and its background. So don't be afraid to leave the areas as they are, or maybe just not put too much paint on. I prefer to build up my paint rather than going in too thick too quickly. I find it gives me a little bit more scope to keep adding rather than to add and then take away. But you can do that if you make a mistake. I have mixed ultramarine deep plus yellow ochre light, and I am controlling the temperature shifts with cad yellow, where I want it warm, plus white, where I want it cool. I am also being selective about where I am laying areas of high saturation, and I am being very sparing about this. If I want to neutralise my green a bit, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a tiny amount of raw umber plus cad red. So don't forget that you can desaturate colours with their colour opposites. So red will kill off a strong green and vice versa. I am adding more of a yellow-green around the edge of my cat as a transition colour into that cooler green I have above the cat. It's all about edges and integrating the cat into its background at this stage and tweaking areas that provide those little accents. And here it is. Here is the final painting. I hope you have found this week's video useful. Please like and subscribe if you can, and also check out my website sarahhallidayart.com, where you'll find examples of my work and details of online classes that I run. Thank you for watching, and see you for the next one.